To go for my love history, the Cold War for me was always a interesting topic in school because it was so recent in terms of historical factor, yet also so far in the past at the same time. Granted, much more things were further in the past, but the Cold War still felt quite at home. Um, the Cold War, for those who wouldn't be aware, it wasn't quite a war because no two sides ever really collided. The two main sides, this one being America and this one being the Soviet Union or the USSR, the United Socialist, uh, Soviet Socialist of Russia. Um, they never really fought against each other physically. However, tactically, they were doing it all the time. And as a result of it not occurring physically, that's why it was given the term Cold War. Typically, I believe it started during the 1960s or late 1950s, and it ended in 1991, despite the popular belief that it ended after the Berlin Wall collapse in 1989. The Berlin Wall was the main wall that really showed the stark differences between what the West were getting into compared to the Soviet Union, who were what looked like decades behind in agriculture, structure, well, becoming under architecture. So architecture, agriculture, politically as well. But the Berlin Wall helped solidify the fact that it was coming to an end. But what really ended it was the military coup that occurred in 1991, where Soviet troops invaded. Well, they can't invade. Well, they broke into the main government building in Moscow at the time, and they held the country's leader, who I believe was Mikhail Gorbachev. He had them hostage, and in the end, nothing occurred, and they managed to, well, essentially, it brought an end to what we know as the Soviet Union. All the countries that they had at the time, so the Baltic states of the east, Ukraine, Bulgaria as well as some of the southern countries. So I think it went as far down as the likes of the Czech Republic, which I believe was called that in the end after the war. I can't remember fully. There were some other factors that also ended it. For example, the policies Mikhail Gorbachev brought in when he became the ruler of the Soviet Union, Glasnost and Perestroika, which loosely translates to freedom and transparency. So the government became more open about what they were doing, whilst it allowed the citizens within the nations to be able to vote freely. They could vote to stay in the union, or they could vote against it. They could hold the government officials accountable for the acts that they did, which were either legal, illegal, kind of what we are used to in the West or in likes of most Asian countries as well. Asian American countries, South American, we can just hold them accountable and essentially try and get them to understand the differences from what we have to experience compared to themselves. But on top of that, when that was brought in, it really did revolutionise the ending of a standard communist state. But as well as himself, Mikhail Gorbachev, Ronald Reagan, the former US president during the 1980s, I think it started in 1980s to 1989, he managed to strengthen up the Western European side and America to try and boost any potential attacks that could have occurred. Thankfully, none did, but there were many, many tense moments even before Reagan's presidency. For example, the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s, 70s under John F. Kennedy when he was president, which is where the Soviets brought over large number of close-range missiles into Cuba, which is just south of the Florida state. And those missiles could reach as far as the capital in Washington, D.C., as well as all the way, I think, just shy of the top left 3 states. I can't remember the name of them for the life of me. No, but that was always quite a scare for many people during the time. But no, since they never really collided, there was always hope for resolution, no matter how tense the war went. And that is a very brief starting and end to the Cold War in Europe.